welcome to the Dawn Chorus. I'm Bernard Hickey for Kia ora, and welcome to the Dawn Chorus. I'm Bernard Hickey. This is my daily podcast on Thursday, July the 31st. It goes out with an email newsletter via Substack, also called Takaka. Today, I wanted to focus on what's happening with the economy. We get some fresh numbers yesterday afternoon from business confidence. This is the ANZ Business Outlook survey. It's done monthly. The other one is the New Zealand Institute of Economic Research's quarterly survey of business opinion. But the ANZ one is often the fastest, and also it includes results from the farming sector, which the NZIER survey doesn't. So this survey was for July, and it showed that overall business confidence about the wider economy increased a bit, as did uh, confidence about existing activities for businesses. But it's still at very low levels. The key thing in this month's survey is what's happening with the building sector. And I wanted to run through it. Essentially, it's tanking. That's according to Sharon Zollner, the ANZ New Zealand chief economist, who has sifted through the data and announced it. So, just to give you a sense of what's happening here, the yellow line is the uh, residential outlook for the next 6 months from house builders. And you can see it collapse there in July and is back at levels significantly lower than a year ago, and at levels Sharon says is the lowest in a year. It's also back at levels we saw pre-COVID, and is significantly not enough to deal with our housing crisis. This, of course, is all about the government's decision announced last week, but really in place since the beginning of the year, to essentially stop building new state houses and to start selling off land. That has hit the business sector hard, not just new houses being built, over 3,000 were cancelled, but because the sector had grown used to and started to expect there would be a solid stream of new builds coming through from Kāinga Ora. Again, the government did this to so-called save money, reduce borrowing, and reduce interest rates. However, in doing so, it has shot itself in the foot. The idea is that lower interest rates will improve house building, but of course, if the government itself is the biggest house builder, that's also a major problem. And it's clear now that the economy has fallen back into recession in the middle of this year. Now, according to Sharon Zollner, the most noteworthy move in the survey was the tanking of residential construction activity. It appears residential builders are giving up on recovery anytime soon. So that obviously is a problem for the government, and you can see it here also in the numbers for retail, employment, and in just about all of the sectors. Anything below zero means they're reducing staff. The only one above zero at the moment is agriculture, and certainly retail is really doing it tough. And it's interesting. I've got some numbers in there on retail confidence and retail activity in the last year, particularly retail employment. That's at new record lows. Now, the government is claiming that the rise in homelessness documented in the last couple of weeks by independent groups, for example, in Auckland, a near doubling of homelessness, and what we're talking about here is true rough sleeping, to over 800. We've had some comment back from the Associate Housing Minister, Tama Potaka. He said yesterday, when asked, was it the government's decision last year to move people out of motels responsible, and also its decision to stop building new homes, he said, quote, "There's a range of causes, and one of the biggest ones is disconnection with families and with whānau. And that's one of the biggest contributors to sleeping rough." So that's one way to approach the problem, is to spread the blame around. And unfortunately, the response from MSD wasn't great either. In a report that I linked to in the email newsletter from RNZ, Karen Hocking, the Group General Manager for Enablement at the Ministry for Social Development, isn't happy with the numbers that have come through from the National Homelessness Project. This is charities such as The City Missions, Salvation Army, and a whole bunch of community housing groups who are actually on the ground counting people in processes. So essentially, blaming the numbers and blaming the victim. Some numbers out yesterday too on life expectancy. This is important, and it's not that much different from a couple of years ago, but just it's worth mentioning that those people who are the least deprived in this case are living for men almost to 85, for women closer to 90. Those people who are in the most deprived live on average about 10 years less in Aotearoa. Now, the must read this week I've linked to is a great piece from Eloise Gibson, just going into the details of why simply changing everyone's cars to electric doesn't actually solve the problem of reducing emissions. We really need to pump up public transport. It's a great piece. I'd recommend it. And have a look at today's cartoon. It's a cracker from Chris Slane, who does this cartoon for the listener, but this is an independent one in Blue Sky. You might recall that Nicola, that Christopher Luxon was booed over the weekend. He's blaming Labor for that, according to Chris. I'm Bernard Hickey. That was today's Dawn Chorus for Thursday, July the 31st. Ka kite anō.